Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. My name is Mike Zaremba, and you are joining me today for Vancouver Real podcast out of Float House here in downtown Vancouver, BC. The Vancouver Real podcast is brought to you by Float House. Floathouse.ca is the website, and use the promo code Vancouver Real to save 20% off a single float to experience flotation therapy and its plethora of benefits. I also want to have a little announcement for the Vancouver Real community, because we have lots of events that we do every single month here on Vancouver Real, and they're basically free meetups that we do spanning a variety of topics, things ranging from digital marketing workshops to plant nutrition based workshops to group hikes and martial arts and yoga, and just kind of like a little sample of all the things we talk about here on the show, and then we want to bring it out into the community and actually connect with people in real time, and that's what the meetups are all about. So our next one is actually November 7th with Dr. Carlos de Leon of the Ontogeny Center, and that is going to be entitled The Universe of the Unconscious, and we had him on our show a couple weeks ago talking about out-of-body experiences and lucid dreaming and just kind of the nature of the subconscious and the shadow work and all that kind of stuff. Really, really interesting guy. So definitely check that one out November 7th. And we also want to make an announcement for the Mindful Mass community, which is a community that we are associated with here at Vancouver Real that does flash mob meditation meetups probably once a quarter or so. So mindfulmass.org is that website where you can get on the mailing list and be staying in tune for that next meditation mob that we'll do with that public display of meditation, or as I call them, consciousness bombs. So check that one out. And then lastly, which is going to tie really nicely into our episode, is announcing the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference for 2017, happening November 4th and 5th at UBC, is what we're actually going to be talking about today. And if you use the promo code REAL, R-E-A-L, you will save $22 off your ticket for the entry. And what better way to kind of segue into today's episode, because joining me, returning guest, is Stephen Gray, one of the lead organizers, and he's brought a friend, Celina Archambault, who has been now organizing the event for a couple years and volunteering towards it, and we're really excited to get her side and her take on it all too. But first of all, two of you, welcome to Vancouver Real. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And I'd be lying to say that this wasn't the first time around we've done this intro, because we had a little computer malfunction, but we've decided to. You guys have been very patient, and we're gonna go at this again. Third time's the charm. That's right. Third time's the charm, folks. Yeah, that's right. But we kind of started the last episode off with a little background about the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, and I'm gonna start there again, Stephen, with you. You've been a part of it for what, 6 years now yourself? 7 years, yeah. And now one of the lead organizers of it. Can you kind of take us back to the origins of this conference and why it exists?
Well, it was the brainchild of Andrew Resmer, who is responsible for Conscious Living Network, the sponsoring organization of the conference. And Andrew had some very powerful experiences with psychedelics at one point that moved him to want to share that information with people. So that's how it got rolling. Okay. Yeah. And I kind of alluded to this before as well, but what, can you kind of step into what is a spirit plant medicine, and why have you decided to devote so much energy towards creating a conference around it? Yeah, there are several classes of these medicines, the phenethylamines and the tryptamines and so on. They have in common, when they're used properly, the ability to function as truth serums, show people what they need to see about themselves and their lives that's standing in the way of their awakening, and they can also show you the unconditioned realities beyond the personal story as well. They are, I would say, the most direct and powerful medicines and spiritual allies or guides on the planet right now. They're powerful, they need to be handled properly and carefully, and when they have this remarkable potential, and that's ridiculously important at this point of human history, to have as many people as possible wake up as fast as possible.
Okay. Yeah. And Celina, so maybe I'll jump to you with this one then. Like, for yourself, what kind of got you into this world of spirit plant medicines in general, and how has it taken you to this position in the conference, with the conference now, if you don't mind sharing that part of yourself?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a big answer as to how I got into all this stuff. Just like anybody, I think that's kind of getting into plant medicine stuff. It's usually a lot of serendipities and magic that kind of comes through once you start opening up and going into the plant world. Yeah, a lot of people that will work with plants will understand this, and people that are new to it won't. But very often we kind of get guided around what we should be doing. And very often it's very different than what we think we're going to do. So when I actually finished my school for holistic nutrition and thought that I was going down that road. And then once I started opening up to the plant medicines, it completely changed roads. And I'm actually a very, like, I don't want to say antisocial, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to go to events, really. Like, I'm kind of like, I'd rather stay at home and chill out tonight. So for me to do an event is very out of my comfort zone.
Interesting.
And it was very much guided. And like I say, with like the magic piece, the more that you kind of allow yourself to just express kind of what the plants are kind of want to come out of you, the more people show up and you get support. And it's just, you can't not go that way. It's like almost painful not to go that way. It's like you kind of just have to keep trusting in whatever you're doing. And like I said, like last year, I didn't really know, I had never organized it before, but it did go really well. And it was because I think I was supported by, I want to say spirit or, you know, the greater magic as to opening this up, because currently there's not much education right now around psychedelics in a trustworthy kind of like information as to guidance around what I should do. There's a lot of articles right now talking about LSD for anxiety or depression or microdosing mushrooms. But there's, we can learn and we can read little articles, but it's really through speaking with people and learning about different people's experiences that we can gather, you know, trustworthy information to go off of.
So it sounds like this has been, obviously your work with the plants has been a very personally transformative experience, so much so that now it's putting you in this position of helping to organize this conference, which you just said is something that you would normally not want to pursue. I'm definitely not somebody that's going to go up and speak in front of a whole bunch of people. I'm a lot much more shy, and especially for events, like I'm not really the kind of person that's just going to go to a random event just to check it out. You kind of have to push me to go. So for me to put on an event is very out of my comfort zone. Right. And is some of your reasoning similar to Stephen's in terms of why this conference exists, and you know, the belief in that these are agents for change that can, you know, that the world needs right now?
Yeah, I almost feel like this conference almost has like an over halo kind of surrounding around about this higher vision about how we can consciously use these medicines. So this isn't something that we're just kind of pop in your mouth and see what happens. This is stuff that needs to be talked about, planned out, supported, and done with there's a certain level of trust and quality information that needs to be provided. And if I don't do it, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be given out freely. So I think the conference is like a combination of different people that feel very strongly about some of this stuff. And we're trying to help put it out to be like, here, this exists, and these are some tools to use.
And maybe kind of leading into that, Stephen, like can you maybe describe a little bit about this community that is integrated with the conference, whether it's people who attend or people who are organizing it? Like what kind of qualities and attributes of this community do you notice, and that and maybe I'll even say kind of bring a little bit of a leadership position to at times?
Well, yeah, I know it's a pretty amorphous community, pretty loose community. I'm not even sure exactly what the community has in common, other than some interest in either their personal healing or the larger collective healing and awakening, or a combination thereof. You know, and an openness to working with the plants somehow or another. And it's a full range. It's from people. I mean, I have a friend who came last year who has essentially never ever taken a psychedelic or really smoked pot, except for maybe a little when she was 20 or something. And then there are other people that are deeply experienced, that are working in psychedelic therapy of one kind or another, They're writing about it, that are organizing their own events, that are, leading ceremonies, all that stuff. So,
Right. So it's pretty broad in terms of
Definitely, yeah.
people who are just on the beginnings of hearing about these things to people that have devoted their life to
Absolutely,
it,
yeah.
and then probably from all
Well,
walks of life as well.
I would say it's not just kind of whatever. There are maybe some people that go to the conference that know nothing, but I think it's almost like a filter of people that have really been touched by the medicines and really want to learn a little bit deeper as to how to use them. They're very interested. I think you kind of get a calling. I was so happy my mom came last year.
Okay.
And my mom's dipped a little bit into learning about some stuff, but she's never learned about it in ceremonial context. She's, a hippie's child.
Okay.
So it was massive for her to come, and it was like a huge opening for her to come. So it was somebody like that who was my mom. She came because of me, but she wouldn't have come had I not dragged her into being like, Mom, come check this out.
Right. I've been working really hard on this.
Yeah. But I think it does kind of act as a filter of the people that have been touched by the medicines that come to the conference, and they want to connect more. And I think it's the community too. There's huge openings from people that are like-minded coming to find each other. That's another big piece of the conference. I think we need somewhere to find each other.
Gotcha. Okay. So it becomes this little bit of a collective watering hole for the soul, almost, so to speak. Usually it's either late October or early November of each year. So interesting. So Stephen, what can we expect this year? Maybe what speakers, what events you have lined up, workshops, etc.?
Yeah, well, I'll try to fly through this as quickly as possible. We have 2 pre-conference events, too. One on October 15th at 3 p.m. with TJ Daw, King of the Fringe, doing a wonderful thing called Burn Job, which partly refers to his first acid experience, which resulted in a field catching on fire.
Awesome. Yeah, TJ's been, just to interject, he's been a 3-time guest here on the show. So back in the day, he hasn't been on for a while, but yeah, he's an amazing one-man performer.
He's excellent.
Yes,
and
cool.
Then on Sunday, that's Sunday, October 15th, 3 p.m. Tickets are very cheap, and they can be found on the website. And that's at St. James Community Square.
Awesome.
And on Saturday, October 21st, at 7 or so, is another one, which is the North American premiere of a film called Ayahuasca Reframed, and it's primarily about how we move forward with ayahuasca bring it into the world, in the best ways possible. And along with the film, there's going to be a panel discussion with Andrea Langlois from iSeers, the wonderful Mark Hayden, who many people know as the chair of MAPS Canada and a great advocate for the psychedelics altogether, and Sohail Samimi, who is local director of a group that works with ayahuasca and very connected to all that world.
Right.
And then there's this event with Lori. Did we get that on this one yet?
Not yet, no.
No, go ahead.
That one is that one's awesome. That one's done by Lori Snyder. It's with their own local plants that are growing all over in our backyards. So that one is, she's a Métis herbalist.
Okay.
And so she's got a very strong connection to the plant medicines. So she's going to be teaching us about plant medicines that grow in our backyards. And also she'll be giving guidance around how to make tinctures and salves and different medicines from the medicines that we grow around us all the time that we don't even currently know many of their names or have much of a connection as to what they do or what they can use for.
Right, and that one is happening the Friday before the
Friday
conference?
before. She's going to do a first round of people applying for that one. I think she's going to have max out about 20 people. And if we get filled up, she'll open up another time later in the day.
Very cool.
And that one's $30, and it's I think it starts at 1 p.m. and it goes till 2:30.
Excellent, cool.
Yeah.
And with that, like we were kind of chatting last time we talked about it, but just the notion of people being able to connect deeper with the land that they actually do live on by seeing these plants, like Stephen, you were kind of mentioning too. Like we don't really. Like our contemporary culture, let's say, doesn't really have a deep relationship with the native plants of this land.
No.
So why is that important, do you think?
Well, I think it's essential. Actually, it has everything to do with our relationship with plant, and spirit altogether. There are people who understand, not just Indigenous people, but many of them have understood for a long time that it's a relationship, that you can actually have a relationship with plants. Stephen Herod Buhner, for example, in his books like Sacred Plant Medicine, Secret Teachings of Plants, and Plant Intelligence in the Imaginal Realm, talks about actually being able to receive information from plants that they're directly communicating to you. And these are not, ones that make you high, so to speak. These are just any medicinal plant that can offer its wealth to you. So I think our survival as a species is dependent upon our ability to come back down out of the sort of the head, as it were, of the, sort of modern mind, slow our minds down, be able to open ourselves up to the connection to, the planet and all the species and the flora and the fauna and everything like that. They have much to teach us. And I should segue into from this Friday event, because it's on the same theme, because we're having a mini kind of lunch hour workshop with Sonia Milimaki, who is going to be teaching people about dieting. For those people that are working with ayahuasca in particular, there's this dieting that happens, and it's an essential part, actually, a very important part. We could spend a whole interview just talking about the relationship of the dietas and the benefits of the dietas for working with ayahuasca. So she's going to teach people about dieting with local plants.
And I think that is so interesting. I mean, what a neat concept in my mind of like really taking the dieta in preparation for, whether it's for ayahuasca or not, to just a whole other level of intimacy, and I think, of connection and power, like you said, like reconnecting with the plants that are produced out of the environment that you also cohabitate with. I think that's such I never really personally have thought about that concept before, but it makes complete sense. I think it'd be really, really powerful.
If we could ever think of ourselves as just equal to the plant realm, we'd be way better off. So maybe I should go through some of the other presenters.
Sure, please.
There's a strong Indigenous component this year. We have, I don't want to just take the time to go through all of them, but we have at least 3 people that are coming from the Indigenous background. One of them is Mary Porter, who's the director of the Looking Glass Peyote Church down in Oregon, and she's also a very strong communicator, spokesperson for the vision of coming back to who we are all together. Then there's Kateri Walker, who, among other things, is an actress in Los Angeles, and she's Chippewa, and I'm not sure exactly what she's going to talk about, just sacred journeys and so on, but she also does a traditional dance called the Jingle Dance, which she's going to do at the conference, which is kind of cool. And then there's Dawn Davis, who's doing a PhD, I believe, on peyote sustainability, which is a very, very important topic, and to let people know about the sacred relationship of peyote. So there's those 3 women.
Can I ask you real quick about the Indigenous representation at the conference? Why is that important to you?
Well, when we had our corrupted file earlier, we were talking a little bit, you were, Celina, talking a little bit about that too, and you were too, actually, Mike, about how there's a groundedness of connection to the earth and to the plants that I was saying the way I was talking a few minutes ago, that is part of traditional communities. In many places in the world, it has been for a long time. Most people that just lived off the land, so to speak, knew every single plant in their environs, and they knew, was it medicine, was it food, was it something they could use for building materials, was it something they could make into poison, for hunting or enemies or whatever. They knew everything, and they knew all these plants, like the kind that we're working with, and so there's that kind of connection that Indigenous people often have. And somehow, this is another, kind of complicated topic in a way, but as an old elder from the Native American Church once told me, he said, "Hey, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I've observed all my life that you Western-type people, you European-type people, based people, are much more in your heads than the Native people are. Your minds are way busier." And it's getting out of the busy mind that allows a gap that allows us to enter into unconditioned reality. So yeah, that's kind of the reason for as much of, and plus they've been the kind of the space holders of these medicines, many of them.
Right. Right. And they have probably the longest standing histories with them, and
thousands of years
contextual
sometimes.
use, right? Like it's and if there's any better kind of context to learn from, I think that's a huge part of it, right?
Yeah, and many of them have never been completely caught up into the Western mindset, you know. So they haven't been served by it, so they've been at a distance from it, for many of them. And so they're not as attached to it. They have a bigger overview oftentimes.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very cool.
And back in the day, they were always using medicine in ceremonies, whereas our culture has really lost that much connection around having people join in sacred space. Our culture has really lost that. So I think that's a huge piece too, is just bringing back that culture, bringing back that home feeling of feeling safe with people and coming into, a space where there's no cell phones, there's no, like, everybody knows what's up, and it's like sacred space, and it's silent time, and
something that struck me really hard just when you said that right now is just the concept of having medicine, and you use the words medicine and ceremony. Medicine in ceremony, like, the allopathic form of medicine. I mean, I can't think of any westernized allopathic medicine that has a ceremonial context or relationship really at all. No. However, the more we learn about the mind-body connection and and our interconnection with other beings and stuff like that, how much someone's physiology, psychology, and healing can be influenced just by that alone, let alone like creating a container and a context with intention and like connecting with people in a space, and like how that much that can affect a person specifically, whether it's for healing or not. But something that hit me there was just like, right, medicine and ceremony is just a completely alien concept for the most part. So another educational piece.
And even
there
if
too.
Even if people do want to do a ceremony kind of a thing, they're not going to know how to make a ceremony. Like we need people to show other people. We need teachers. We need people, the community, to come together and teach, and bring people into this.
Right.
I kind of explain things to people. I work at the shaman, and we have different plant medicines, and I explain it saying, like, if you're going to do a journey, you wouldn't just go to the airport and just go on the very first flight. When you're at the airport, you would actually plan. You would actually choose your destination. You would pack your clothes. You would set yourself up for this. But a lot of people that are curious, that are looking into, like, feeling the calling of learning more about psychedelics, they don't really know where to begin. So this conference is kind of a place for people to open up to that. I mean, that was huge for me, and that was honestly my whole life changed from that first year of me learning about other people, being invited to other ceremonies, being more introduced to some of more of the plants.
Very cool.
And one of the, I think, principles of the conference is that it can make a huge difference, the kind of ritual setting and expertise involved in it. That young people, one of the reasons for having the conference is to educate people that if you can be in the right place, the right physical place with the right mindset and the right kind of guidance, the potential of what these plants can produce in you are potentially far vaster than what you would find on your own, or just especially when you do them in a casual way, like taking some mushrooms at a party and then mixing it with cannabis and alcohol or whatever,
Completely different.
Completely different. And this also ties back into the communication with the plants as living beings as well, because all the shamans, like the ayahuasca shamans, they say, the real ones, the authentic ones, the ones with integrity, will say that they are in communication with the spirit of that plant, and it actually guides them. Now, just think of that in a ritual container, in a ceremony, that the person who's guiding it is in contact with the guidance of the spirit of that plant. Even the songs with ayahuasca, the Icaros, I've been told by the shamans that they are, in a sense, beings, that they'll come in, a song will come into them and say, this is the song, I'm the song for this person right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, how does that's so radically different than just like treating a substance as a commodity, for entertainment or escapism or fun or any of that sort of stuff.
And let's, let's kind of, we'll come back to the more about the conference in a sec, but in terms of that topic, like, for people that are maybe just being introduced to this cosmology, you're right, this is a lot to kind of take in, from standard westernized frames of mind and stuff like that. So, maybe someone is listening to this right now and they're like, wow, this is some pretty woo-woo talk we're getting into here. So if that's the case, what could you say to that person just in the time being, given where they're at, to remain open? Like how do you kind of encourage that if you can?
You want to try that one?
Sorry, I don't know if I completely understand the question. Let me try to get
Basically, I'm looking at like the conversation we're having now. We're talking about relationships with plants. The spirit of a plant is coming in, and you're being guided to do this conference and all this kind of stuff. Like, that might be a lot for people to take in.
Yes,
so how do we maybe connect them to that cosmology, at least being open to be like, okay, I can be open to hear this out. I don't know. Do you have any like what happens when you're in your daily life? It's maybe you come up like one of your friends brings up this topic and the other friend is not there yet, but there's three of you. So what do you do?
I think it's really important not to push any of this on anybody. And I think the people that are driven to learn about this stuff that's in them. And there's kind of like a strong calling that kind of comes in. There's people that are somewhat interested. Maybe they're hearing about different things, but maybe if they don't have that internal kind of like, I want to know more, then that's what I kind of mean about like the conference being a little bit more focused, in that people going have had a little bit of connection with medicine, but not even necessarily that they've taken medicine, but they feel that inside of them and they're like, I want to know more. Then those are the people that should come.
It acts like a filter a little bit.
Yeah.
But it could be as simple as just the need for change, because that's people come to a point in their lives where they go, whatever I'm doing now, it's not working to the level that I would like it to work at, and then they hear about it. So this is what you're saying. It's a kind of a calling, and you definitely. I'm glad you said that. You just don't push people at all about it.
No.
It's just, there's a level of readiness, right?
Exactly, and
there's a Buddhist concept or teaching, which the Buddha apparently said that there are 49 levels of aspiration, and you teach to that person's level. Like, that's called skillful means. You become aware. Like, I don't, a whole bunch of my wife's friends, they have no idea that I'm even doing this work, because I know they're not open to hearing about that sort of stuff. I don't talk about it with them. I don't proselytize this stuff at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm pretty open now. Like, I just want to be me with everything, but I know not to share with the wrong people. I'm not going to share it with people that aren't into it. If people are asking me questions, I'll share maybe what I feel comfortable sharing, but I'm pretty much just me now. Just if you have a question, I gladly answer it, but
exactly.
I don't try to keep it down.
Thread.
Yeah, and I think with all of this stuff too, like some plants people feel very strong callings to, and other plants people feel actually very strong that I don't want to mix. Some people are very negative towards, say, cannabis, like they don't feel it. That's totally cool. Like that's if you're not feeling it, I feel like the stuff actually kind of activates your free will, if you may. Like, I think it kind of gets you more activated into like what you're interested in and what brings you joy and that mystery. And I think it's good to kind of follow that as to,
I agree with that. But also as a sort of a slight, difference on that. That's part of the reason we're doing the conference is because, for example, cannabis is a good example, because the reason that a lot of people don't relate to cannabis is they haven't learned how to use it properly. They haven't learned how to surrender to it completely and do it with some kind of ritual and respect and reverence for the plant itself, and turn off their minds as much as possible. And then, there's this plant here. It's actually a very kind, healing plant. I've definitely experienced that with a variety of people, that they've done it in a ritual environment, like with me in a ceremony, for example, and I'm sure you've had that experience where their relationship with cannabis before was negative or conflicted, and then they go, wow, this is a whole other way of meeting this plant, right?
Yeah.
So again, that's, we're trying to open people up to, greater possibilities.
Speaking of that, that's probably an interesting plant to speak of to try to make this connection that we're talking about, because now with cannabis becoming legalized and just this general popularity, for lack of a better term, within Vancouver, especially in the west coast of Canada and all throughout Canada, really, it's something that people are very familiar with, but yet maybe they're not quite bringing this next level of intention to it and ceremonial elements, but what potentially could be such a great bridge right there is like, okay, can you maybe sit down with Stephen or Celina and do a cannabis ceremony with them and follow their guide and perhaps have a different experience than what you've typically had that with the relationship to cannabis, you know?
Exactly.
So that's,
Yeah.
cannabis is a very interesting tool that way, or I don't want to say tool, plant, spirit
Sure.
that way.
Yeah.
Tool ally as well.
Yes.
I've been doing cannabis meditations for a couple years now, and it's transformative.
Right.
People to have it in a ceremonial setting, completely different inner body awareness, communication, higher source information. It's an amazing tool
Well,
to be
that's
used
why,
in ceremony.
I mean, the legalization of it, although it has these pretty strict regulations and guidelines and all that stuff, I still think is a gigantic step for consciousness.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it opens up, I like to think of it as a potential thin edge of the wedge, too, sort of the advanced guard, because once the plant is legalized and the conversation can be more objective and open about it, people are also going to start finding out more about its spiritual benefits, and that can link over to the spiritual benefits of these other plants that a lot of people still haven't cottoned onto, like just maybe they still think of LSD as a drug or something, you know. I mean, the relationship of cannabis to, you know, that people have, or to cannabis, that a lot of people that never had any relationship with it before are coming in because of the medicine, medicinal benefits of the plant. So yeah, it's very powerful potential there.
Yeah.
Perhaps I should say a little bit more about some of the.
Please, let's
I'll
go back
go
to the
through
list.
as quick as I can. I'm not even going to do them all, but here's a few of the ones that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
This is a really different one for us. Mark Blumenthal is the head of the American Botanical Council, and his work is not primarily associated with psychedelics, but it's going to be very important work speaking about cannabis, for example, because what they're doing is holding people's feet to the fire about the veracity and the quality and authenticity of any herbal medicines that are on the market, because they're finding a lot of it's bullshit. A lot of it is not what they say on the label or whatever, and that's going to be really important when we get legal cannabis.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, is it mold free? Is it got the THC content that it says it does? You know, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So he's going to talk about some of that stuff. Another one that I'm excited about is Nishay Deveneaux. She's an academic, but it's her theme that I'm really interested in. It's called Coming Out of the Psychedelic Closet.
Okay.
And this is an important theme as well. It's like you got to stand up, you know, because a lot of people have a lot to lose and they're aware of it.
Right.
But there's this idea, you know, I don't want to be glib about it in any way, because I understand and I empathize with the roles that people are playing in other parts of their lives. But it's kind of, you know, Celina's been alluding to it in the conversation, trusting what I call the golden thread, you know, trusting the medicine, trusting the teachings, and coming out of the psychedelic closet and saying, yes, I'm doing this, because that's how we spread, you know, the notion that these are not weird things, you know.
Right.
They're powerful, beneficial allies when used right.
And I think a lot of the stuff that it kind of gets us to do is things that are out of our comfort zone. So like I said, doing an event like this is totally out of my comfort zone, but as things lead and I trust, the help shows up, and that I can talk about with many different situations with plant medicine, and many people speaking to different people. It's often the same kind of magic threads and synchronicities.
Agents of change, no doubt, right? And healing and change and growth. That seems like, yeah, it's not that you can't have growth in other ways at these rates, but man, oh man, like if you're open to them and you have the opportunity, really, it is an opportunity. Like it's quite profound how much you can learn.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
No one's saying these are the only path by any means.
No.
And in fact, they ideally, or maybe even more than ideally, maybe essentially, need to be ground into daily practice as well.
Yes.
And so, that reminds me. One thing we're going to do this year is we're going to have several little mini talks of about 10, 15 minutes. Sohail Samimi, who's doing who's going to be on the panel for the ayahuasca reframed one, I just arranged with him yesterday to do like a 10, 15-minute one on cannabis and spirituality. And Trevor Miller is probably going to talk a little bit about iboga and ibogaine.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm meeting him for coffee this weekend. And also this fellow that you turned me on to, Terry Situ, is going to talk about integration, which is another thing that you could talk about for half an hour.
Totally.
That, you know, especially with things like ayahuasca, you can go and you have these peak experiences sometimes, you see God, say hello, but then you come back, and how do you ground that into your regular life? And a lot of people don't necessarily do that well.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily create lasting change.
And I think another thing to that too is people don't necessarily want to necessarily do the work. Like, it's kind of like once you go in, you're kind of put up to the plate, and it's like, okay, now you know some stuff. Are you going to do it?
That's what I'm
And
talking
a lot of
about.
people, when they come back, they're,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do this, or I don't have the
No.
support maybe, or I don't really know where to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, we want to bring all of this stuff to light and talk about it and set people up for good
Yeah.
scenarios to come, so that good things can be manifested.
Yeah. Great
Absolutely.
point. Great
Integration is essential, and especially also what you were saying. You know, that people don't know what to do with that oftentimes, and they're stepping back into a culture that's completely foreign to that way of seeing and understanding. Right, so that you still have to keep the channels open. So that's really important. There's two other people I want to mention. I'm
Sure.
not covering everybody, but there's two other people I would like to mention that I think are really, that I'm excited about and that are really important. One is Chris Killam, who's back for his second year.
Very cool.
And,
Very entertaining.
And we should also mention the psychedelic comedy dinner, but in a moment,
Yeah.
a little later. And Chris is a fantastic speaker. He's so experienced. He's so out there. I saw him at Salome's Cannabis Conference earlier this year give an hour-long talk with no notes, no ums, no ahs.
No.
That was just really inspirational. He's really good. He's sometimes known as the medicine hunter. He travels the world looking for plant medicines and talking about them on Fox News and CNN and these different things. So he's one, and another one that's quite a different one for us actually is a guy named John Sheldon. He's a master guitar player. He actually toured with some of the world's best musicians when he was younger, like James Taylor and Van Morrison in their bands.
He's like a storyteller so he's going to be telling like a story while he's playing his guitar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He plays electric guitar.